Good evening and welcome to the October 22nd, 2024 planning public meeting. Members of the public were provided with the following methods to watch and or participate in the public meeting. Attend in person at the North Dumfries Community Complex. Welcome. Attend electronically via Zoom to observe the meeting or to speak to an item on the agenda. Watch the live stream by accessing the meeting on the Township's YouTube page. And finally, written comments have been provided to the Clerks Division who have provided council members with them. I'd now like to call the meeting to order and can I have approval of the agenda, please, Councilor Wilson.
Moved by myself, second by Councilor Williams, that council adopt the October 22nd, 2024 council planning public meeting agenda as presented.
All those in favor? Carried, thank you. I'd now like to do the Indigenous acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land on which we gather today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Mutual people. We acknowledge the enduring presence of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today, their achievements and their contributions to our community. We offer this acknowledgement as an act of reconciliation between the Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples of Canada, but they're only words. Our behavior reflects more our true heart than our words do. So I've learned a lot from the Indigenous over the last couple of years, and the main thing they want is respect. Respect and acknowledgement for their history, for what they've contributed, for who they are. And if we as Canadians keep that respect, and that's the way a lot of us were raised, to respect one another. And you have to lose respect as a Canadian. We give it freely. And if we get back to those values, our communities become stronger and better, and our relationships with all nationalities and all races become firmer. So let's stop and reflect on that, please. Thank you. Thank you. Is there any disclosure of care, interest, or general nature there? Seeing none. Committee of Adjustment, motion to go into Committee of Adjustment. Please, Councilor Austin.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Tilley, that the council meeting adjourn at 6:02 p.m. sit as Committee of Adjustment for the purposes of holding public meetings pursuant to the provisions of the planning.
All those in favor? Carried, thank you. I'd now like to call the meeting to order. Can I have approval of the agenda, please, Councilor Williams?
Moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Warman, that the committee adopt the October 22, 2024 Committee of Adjustment agenda as presented.
All those in favor? Carried, thank you. Do any members of the Committee of Adjustment wish to disclose any of interest? Seeing none. We need 2 minutes for these minutes. Councilor Tilley, please.
Moved by myself, second by Councilor Derek Ostner, that the Committee of Adjustment approve meeting minutes dated September 24th, 2024.
All those in favor? Carried, thank you. And 6.5.1 public meeting, 6.5.1 report PD 482024 consent and minor variance application Gunther Holger 37 Mill Street, file number B-06/24, B-07/24, A-10/24, A-11/24, A-12/24. Notice has been given in accordance with the Planning Act. The Secretary Treasurer will record make a record of all people who provide comments on this application and those who register with the Clerk's Department to request a notice of decision. These individuals will be notified of the decision or the convening of future meetings on this application. So there's a sign-in sheet at the back for each application tonight. So if you sign that sign-in sheet, then anything moving along with the file that you sign under, you will get contacted by the Clerk's Division when there's anything coming up about it. So make sure you sign the sign-in sheet, please. I'd now like to call on Christina Blazanovic, planner, GIS technician, to present this application. Christina, please. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
The following presentations The following presentation is for 2 consent applications and 3 minor variance applications for the property located at 37 Mill Street in Air. The purpose of this meeting is to provide an overview of the proposal, to solicit comments, and identify issues or matters to be assessed by staff. The property is located on the southwest corner of the intersection of Mill Street and James Street in Air. This property is approximately 1,753 meters squared in size, with a lot frontage of 30.5 meters onto Newell Street and 56.2 meters onto James Street. This property is currently developed with a single detached dwelling on municipal services. Is zoned Z4 urban residential and designated urban residential and ancillary in the township official plan. This property is located adjacent a listed heritage resource on the municipal heritage registry and is located in an area of significant cultural heritage. As part of the complete application, staff requested that the submission of a scoped cultural heritage impact assessment. The applicant has submitted this GIA, which will be peer reviewed and presented at a future Heritage Advisory Committee meeting prior to a recommendation on these applications being brought forward to the Committee of Adjustment. The owner proposes to sever the subject property, creating 2 new lots for the development of 2 future single detached dwellings. B06/24 is proposed to have a lot width of 15.79 meters onto James Street and a lot area of approximately 451 meters squared. This lot is highlighted in orange on the concept plan. B07/24 is proposed to also have a lot width of 15.79 meters onto James Street and in a total area of approximately 448 meters squared. This lot is highlighted in green on the concept plan. And the retained lot will have a lot width of 24.76 meters onto James Street and a total area of approximately 715 meters squared. This lot is highlighted in blue on the concept plan. The owner has submitted a minor variance application for each of the proposed lots. Both lots are seeking variances to the same sections of the general zoning bylaw, and these requested variances are as follows. Section 8.3.1 requires a minimum lot area of 700 meters squared. The owner seeks relief from this provision to permit a minimum lot area of 451.22 meters squared for lot 1, and a minimum lot area of 448.27 meters squared for lot 2. Secondly, section 8.3.2 requires a minimum lot width of 18 meters. The owner seeks relief from this provision to permit a minimum lot width of 15.79 meters for both lots 1 and lot 2. As part of the proposed severances, the lot frontage and the exterior side yard of the retained lot will be reoriented. This adjustment requires a minor variance application for the retained lot to accommodate the current conditions of the property, specifically in relation to 2 accessory buildings and a deck. The requested variances for the retained lot are as follows. Section 6.4.1 establishes that no person shall erect or cause to be erected an accessory building within a required side yard or between any building lines established by this bylaw. The owner seeks relief from this provision to permit the 2 existing accessory buildings to remain within the existing side yard and building line. Section 6.4.8 establishes that in Zone 4, no accessory building shall be located so that any part or parts of said accessory building is closer to the street line than the front wall of the principal or main building. The owner seeks relief from this provision to permit the 2 existing accessory buildings to be located closer to the street line than the principal dwelling. And section 6.6.1 establishes that no structure other than a permitted building shall be maintained or located within a daylight triangle and may not be greater than 0.75 meters and above the finished grade of either abutting street. The owner seeks relief from this provision to permit the 2 existing accessory buildings to remain within the daylight triangle and be greater than 0.75 meters in height. The photos on the right of the screen are a view of the subject property from Newell Street. On the left-hand side of the photo, there's an existing accessory building as well as a second one located directly behind it. These are the accessory buildings that are seeking these variances. A site visit was conducted on October 7th, which confirmed that the existing deck was recently removed. Therefore, a minor variance for this deck is no longer necessary and has been removed from the requested variances for this retained lot. The owner will be required to submit an updated concept plan that reflects the removal of the deck. This is an image of the rear yard of the subject property, standing on James Street. The yellow dash lines indicate the approximate severance lines for the lot 1, lot 2, and the retained lot. There has been some correspondence received from adjacent properties. The residents have concerns regarding existing drainage patterns. As you can see in the images that have been provided, the rear yard of the subject property experiences the pooling of water during heavy rain events. Additional concerns include the current condition of James Street and how James Street will be improved to accommodate the proposed development. For example, the paving of the street, curbs, sidewalks, etc. the proposed lot sizes, and how the proposed road widening or road improvements would affect the adjacent properties. Staff will be following up with the applicant after the public meeting to address all of these comments and concerns that have been raised. Initial comments from the township's engineering consultant has identified concerns regarding drainage for the proposed development and are not in a position to support the applications at this time. The applicant will be required to address these concerns and submit additional information as well as revised studies and plans. Planning staff are still pending the receipt of comments from the other relevant agencies and departments. Staff recommends that all comments and correspondence received from members of the public and government agencies through the consultation process be returned to staff for a future report to the committee on the disposition of this matter. Staff will be considering matters including all comments and correspondence received, if the proposal in the opinion of staff is desirable for the property, whether the development meets the criteria of the 4 tests, the impact of the proposed development on surrounding properties, and whether the development conforms to the township's official plan and the general zoning bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Would the applicant wish to speak? No.
Madam Mayor, members of council, staff. Christina, thank you for your presentation. That was very thorough and informative, hopefully for the council. I'm here on behalf of the client tonight. I'm representing him in the severance applications. As you can see, the minor variances on the proposed lots. The lots are over 50 feet wide, which is actually quite substantial for today's standards and any day standards. So I don't think the variances are even listed on there or concerned. The variance is being requested along for the existing property. They're exasperated by the road widening that's being taken, and it is an existing condition. The daylight triangle is 15 meters wide. That's 45 feet, right? So the sightlines have been there for a long time, and we understand that. We have seen the comments from the engineering department about grade and drainage, and that's why we have retained our engineer who has qualified it. And in their report, it notes that it can be controlled, and I confirmed this with them today. They're going to be reducing that ponding on the property, if not through infiltration galleries, is what they're called. I'm not an engineer by trade, but I understand that this will be maintained and it'll make the situation much better than what it is, if not completely fix the problem. But we can't control grading of other people's property. All the drainage from that property will be maintained on the property. The natural flow rates are what they are. We can't change that because of gravity, and we can only grade it on the property. But and I've had confirmed this to our engineer today, that we'll be able to maintain and reduce, if not stop all the ponding that's on the property. Obviously, you can't really sell a house if it's going to get a lot. So that being said, I'm happy to answer any questions that staff or council may have at this time for this.
Any questions of council? Councilwoman?
Madam Mayor, through you to head, I'm confused by what you said. You're going to retain the water that you generate on your own property, but the rest of the water that comes on your property, you're not going to deal with. Is that what you just said?
Sorry if I didn't explain myself right. No, the water is going to be, so I'm not an engineer by trade, so obviously I spoke to our engineer, and we're going to be able to capture and control the grade, the water on our property. Where it comes from and how it's released is going to be captured and controlled. I can't speak to that we're going to control everybody's property, but the ponding is going to be taken care of, is what I'm saying.
Councilor Austin?
I have a question. I think it's more directed to CEO McNeil. Sorry.
We'll listen to the speakers first and then we'll go to staff. And that's what.
Yeah,
No, your question.
my question is really more directed when it's appropriate
That's right.
to
Staff, that's fine. Okay, thank you, Mr. Heck. Aaron and Errol, Van Du, would you wish to speak? Sorry, there you are.
Not at this time.
This is your opportunity to speak.
Doesn't want to go out, what's the problem is drainage, okay? Now, my property is adjacent to the property, the proposed property, Severance. My property line is right on the township line. My barn has a door, water comes in from, coming on, James Street. That hasn't been addressed over the years. Okay, water comes right into the barn. what they're proposing is the lowest part of the property there where the water pools all the time. And as far as I can see, there's a catch basin proposed there just for one small area there. The water right now, the road is higher than the properties. And if the water is pooling on the road, just think how much water is pooling and will have to lower down. So my concern is that, okay? For the proposed variation or variance, that part of the street will be widened to accommodate driveways. Is that what I suppose? I'm not an engineer and I don't know too much about it, but what I did see is that's gonna happen. Now, if that road is widened, where is it gonna be widened from? And is there gonna be sidewalks or what? And is that road gonna be lifted so that the water can get underneath or it just catch basin? So this is solve the problem. Right now, I can't see it. Right now. That is my concern.
Yeah, and that's why we need you here to speak,
Yes.
because Christina is taking notes right now to answer all your questions,
Yeah, right.
if they are possible to answer.
That is my main concern, that I don't see anywhere that like that catch basin that is solve the problem.
Thank you, Aaron.
Okay.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on this application? Please come forward and give your name.
Yeah, James Bagnall, I live on the west side of this property. And I just had some concerns again about the drainage, with water. I've sent him some information earlier. And I said, and the engineering, he's mentioned engineering, but I'd like to see a copy of that site personally. Every home on Newell Street is a walk-up basement. So if you start turning houses the other way and it's like building a dike or a dam in the middle of it. So I'm pretty concerned about that. Yeah, we've lived there for 38 years now, so, and it's always had a water problem. So I just don't feel it's gonna go away. That was, other than what I wrote in earlier. It's that it. So tell on how that. Stormwater standing.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on this item?
Hello. Yeah, I did send a pretty extensive email,
And your name, please.
Tammy Foreman. So I live across the street from the proposed application. And so James Street is really a laneway, and from what I understand, when we purchased the property, that we weren't allowed to develop anything at the back because of water. Groundwater and stormwater. I understood that the storm drain was placed there in order to capture water from Hall Street, Mill Street, and the surrounding yards. So the Caves don't live there anymore, but down the street had significant pooling in their yard. And so the solution to that was to put a storm drain in what was a gravel path and pave the street. And so I have significant concerns because of water isn't going into that yard, is it now gonna come into mine? There is literally a pond in the street at times. It's not impactful right now because nobody needs to drive through it to get to their house. There are no houses on that street. Our laneway comes from that street, but we don't have to go down it to get there. Also, the Heritage Shrine shows that 2.5 meters is being taken for street widening, and that cuts across the corner of my house. So I'm quite concerned about that and the loss of property as well. So certainly, there's lots of concerns in the email, and I just ask that they be addressed.
Thank you, Tanya. Anyone else wishing to speak? Please come forward in your name, please.
Hi, my name's Alex White. I'm actually Tanya and Errol's neighbor. That's okay. It's all good. I'll just speak a bit louder. I also have a potential concern about the pooling. Our yard also floods. Our houses are graded actually back to back, so I'm behind them right beside Errol corner to the adjacent lot that's being proposed for development. And aside from the grade of pooling and our house is also pooling, it is currently manageable. And what it sounds like from the engineering plans, which I have some expertise with this area, it sounds like they're going to handle the water out of their side. It sounds like all that water is going to be redirected, and it sounds like they're gonna put in the minimum requirements in order to handle the said water being, for the proposed houses. Maybe even a small accommodation for Errol's backyard, which does of course flood his backyard, but it's, currently, as we were discussing, manageable, but with all the new building and everything going on, those houses will be regraded to push the water away, like every house is actually being regraded. So all new developments have those requirements. They are of course also raised up and they have stairs in. The other concern I have is loss of, our own property as well, which, we put in quite significant amount of effort into maintaining that back area and also the side lots, even though it is only a pass through and, ideally more traffic with another 2 houses and who knows, another family. We want to start our own family and hopefully soon. Unfortunately, with more construction, we picked this house mainly because it is a heritage place. It is a really beautiful area. Not a whole lot of development going on, so we paid a bit more to live in that area. Instead of picking one of the newer developments, we could have easily picked one of the newer houses being in air, but we're like, no, we want to pick somewhere that has a bit more of a cultural aspect and also the fact that, there shouldn't be any development. That was like our whole thing, like, who would want to develop new houses here when everything is so much more beautiful and everything like that. It's been only like 10 years probably since the latest houses that has been built around that area. There's one that was right down the street, which I was quite surprised because it has its own plaque and it's like built in kind of a hubby there. Another concern I have is, we have all these trees. I have these big, beautiful pine trees, and you're gonna be bringing equipment down, those roads, gonna be tearing up the roads. I also have a small irrigation system, which I know for sure will be impacted since that will have to be repaved for sure. Any alterations of also landmass getting taken out and being re-put in, or is somebody going to regrade our side of the lot as well on the bottom area? Will our fences be impacted? I don't know, damaged property, who's facilitating that damaged property? How do we go about that? And also, I would just not be of interest in potentially 2+ years of ongoing development. Like the one down the street is still, it's been a whole year, that one's for sure. And unless they're building that 2 houses in tandem and they're side by side, so all that extra light that we're gonna be getting, even though that we talked about, the angle of the sun coming in, there's only so much extra shade that can be applied down the street. So any of that water also accumulating there, which I think is a missed aspect of the talk, is all that water will not dry out as fast. So all that water will be soaking in a lot longer because as the sun decides to set on that side, the house will be casting a shadow in that direct direction. So it comes up and over our house, and then it will be now directly over those other houses. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Last call, anyone else wish to speak on this item? Going once? Go, come on, Mr. And your name, please, Mr. Leskin.
Yep, my name is Chris Luskin. I'm a neighbor on Newell Street. I'm not directly impacted by the development. But my concern was not only the drainage, which has been spoken about quite a bit, but who maintains the pits that are going to be built on the properties, proposed properties, after the construction is finished. Because if they silt up, then they don't manage the water after a period of time. So then the problem potentially could come back. Again, I'm not an engineer like the first gentleman that spoke earlier, but I understand water always has to go to a spot. That seems to be the spot between the Randu's fence and the edge of the southernmost part of that property. The second point I wanted to make was the 2 properties being severed, being undersized lots. That's by my calculations, it was a 65% of the original township specified lot size, which is 35% less than a normal lot would be required in a development. So I'm not sure that qualifies as a minor variance, although I don't know the legalities of that. It just seems like a major variance to me rather than minor. And the third point I wanted to make was if a property or dwellings are built in that area, is there a limitation to how tall they can be? And I don't have an example in there, but I know a community close by that a home was built with a ground floor. Well, the entrance floor is nearly 8 feet above grade. So a person has to climb up stairs. And then there's 2 more stories on top of that, so that it's basically it's two-story home with a basement is now standing 3 stories proud of the ground because they didn't dig a basement. So I'm wondering if that would be allowed under current bylaws or rules or whatever you want to call them. And then if a building that high is constructed, it creates shadows for the surrounding properties. And I don't know if I don't know what specified to going on that home. I just saw a footprint, so many square feet or so many square meters with double car garage. So I don't know if they've decided what's going to go there or if you guys have a say on what can be built there. So anyway, that's the 3 points I wanted to make along with the letter I submitted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, anyone else wish to speak on this item? Seeing no one, Councillor Oster, you're up first, for staff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to CO McNeely. There's just some notes I made. So the first question would be, if this application was to go through, is James Street going to be torn up? And are we putting drainage through there to connect, or is this drainage that everyone keeps talking about the sole responsibility of the landowner?
So, Madam Mayor, through to Councillor Oster. At a minimum, there would need to be road cuts in each of the 2 lots to connect laterals for both the water and sanitary services. That would be at a minimum. Because right now there are no connections to the proposed property lines. The biggest issue has been flagged by numerous of the delegations this evening is the issue of surface water runoff and the ponding that historically occurs on the vacant rear portion of this existing lot, and under extreme conditions actually spills over, then pops on top of James Street itself. That historic overland drainage has to be resolved if you're going to put 2 homes or 1 home, whatever the case may be, ultimately at that low location. And that is what the township engineer has been focusing on. The 2.5 meter widening that's being proposed isn't necessarily in these early years necessary for road improvements in terms of widening the asphalt travel portion of the road. At a minimum, it would be utilized to assist in the overall drainage at that low point. The theory is in combination between the on-site controls, intercepting some of that overland flow that's occurring, in combination with roadside drainage improvements. With the sum of the 2, the question is, can that deal with the overland contribution existing, as well as what will be created because of the additional hard surfaces that will occur with the construction of the 1 home or 2 homes, as the case may be. Think of the roof, sidewalks, patio, driveway. So you're actually increasing the impervious surface. That has to be accounted for. So the question will be, can the existing overland flow be intercepted? If yes, what does that design look like? And how on both the public and private sides can you model and capture the overland flow such that it does not exasperate or contribute to additional ponding on one of the adjacent properties. And that's what the township engineer has asked for more information to demonstrate that development as proposed can be achieved on day one. And in the longer term, because one of the residents did speak to, okay, fine, it's designed, it works on day one. What does the maintenance look like? And how effective is that 5 years down the road, 15 years down the road? Township has in recent projects in this broader area has utilized infiltration galleries. But in each of those cases, we're controlling the infiltration galleries and we're maintaining the integrity of those infiltration galleries to ensure that sediment doesn't build up inside those traps so that they'll continue to work in the longer term. I would suggest a similar kind of design would have to occur to ensure the integrity of the system in future years, so that we don't create a problem and have less options in the future.
Thank you, Senior McNally. Councillor Austin?
So I have several questions that I'm just gonna forego right now because I think it's better for a different time. It's a lot to do about the engineering stuff. But right now, we have no addresses, no physical addresses on James Street, because it does as they're saying that it seems like it's just a laneway. And does the township maintain that laneway in the winter?
So Madam Mayor, through to Councillor Oster, it is a public road. By design, it would be substandard in terms of a 2-lane road cross-section. It looks like, functions like a lane. There are no residences fronting onto it in terms of gaining it as their principal means of access. People can get to their rear yards off of James Street, but not their principal means of access to their principal residences. The history of James Street, if you take a look at Newell was built in 2 phases. The older section of Newell, which would be to the west of the intersection, all the sanitary flows came to the James Street intersection and then went down through James Street and flowed into the sanitary sewer on Hall Street. And that's why that lane, the road was created, was to drain largely the sanitary sewer and to supply a second feed of water in a looped fashion for the original build of Newell Street decades ago. In a later phase, the balance of Newell Street was built generally to the east of James Street. And you can see by the nature of the road cross section, because it's actually got curb and gutter, and it flows to Main Street. So it was an urban outlet, principally for sanitary flows to allow the initial development of Newell Street to occur. But it is a public road, it is maintained for seasons, and there is an existing very deep sanitary sewer at that location.
Councillor Roman?
Madam Mayor, my question is through you to the CEO. I know we have an underutilized stormwater management pond on Main Street. Is there any discussion with the engineer about moving our water from James Street up to that swing pond?
So as part of the design of Hall Street or the reconstruction of Hall Street, we are assessing the appropriate feasibility to, by pipe, urbanize Hall Street and drain water to the existing storm pond that the township owns at the intersection of Main and Hall. I think it would be difficult to take it from the low point here on James because there's quite a significant variance in elevation between Hall and the low point on James, where these 2 lots are being proposed. I would think it'd be problematic to bring it up the hill, within the road allowance of James Street into Hall Street. The reason why a sanitary sewer works here is the sanitary sewer on Hall Street is particularly deep. And I believe it was made that deep because of the Newell James connection point.
Council Williams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is, with regards to the two lots being proposed on there, it seems out of character for the neighborhood itself, or it's a much more mature neighborhood and there is bigger yards and stuff. Is that something that we take into account when we consider applications like these?
CEO McNeely.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through Councillor Williams. Yes, and in the context of this specific location, it's done in the context of two things. One, there was a previous mention that there are a number of significant period houses, principally oriented along Hall Street, but in proximity to the site. So the cultural heritage impact assessment that was undertaken looks at that element, both in terms of its built form, and whether or not the proposed lots would have a detrimental impact on the character of that neighborhood from a built form perspective, but also takes into context lot orientation, lot size, and its relationships. Under general planning principles, including what's articulated in our official plan, we are to look at adjacencies and whether or not proposed development, including infill, which this would fall under that definition, has a detrimental impact on planned function of those neighborhoods, the infrastructure in those neighborhoods, and similar characteristics. So those are all part of that eventual review and will be reflected in the recommendation report to committee of adjustment that would follow. And as I said, unique to this location, it would be done through the two lenses just because of the setting in which it resides.
No other councils, I'll ask my questions now. Okay, thank you. I have concerns about the daylight triangle. Now, James Street's quite narrow. So if we're gonna put two more homes there, it was never meant to take back and forth traffic, really. That's why the houses are situated on the north and the south sides, on Newell and on Hall. So would we have to widen the road to allow for two-way traffic? Also, the driveways coming out would be on an angle type driveway filling into James, the new houses. Also, the crossing of the children going to school, because that is a pathway that they use. So you're coming up that steep hill, if you live in those homes, you come up the steep hill towards Hall Street, and you're on a interesting kind of angle trying to watch for children crossing. So there's a multitude of questions I have for this area, including the one about the daylight triangle, as we talked in the last several council meetings about daylight triangles and how essential they are for clear situation of seeing and for children crossing. Do you want to comment on any of those, CL?
So, Madam Mayor, one of the aspects, in addition to the site servicing, grading profile, stormwater management, the engineer group was asked to look at the appropriateness or applicability of James Street and what kinds of improvements, if necessary, will be required initially to accommodate the development or in the longer term. Hence why, in part, it's the road widening to create additional lands that could accommodate in time future improvements to the corridor, including widening the pavement. We're only dealing this time with a portion of James Street. We're only dealing with a lot that's being severed on the west side of the road, roughly half the depth of James Street. It would be difficult to improve the road, only controlling a portion of what would be actually necessary to make that full improvement. And as one of the residents in the presentation indicated, some of the built form on their property, if a similar land conveyance was to occur for the widening, it would actually negatively impact one of their existing buildings. Because it's close to the road allowance today, it would actually form part of the road allowance if a similar lens was to be taken. The same thing exists on the other side of the road, on the east side. So that's why I'm saying initially, the look was, do we use this widening to protect for the longer term? So that if further improvements are required, we're partway through that equation. But initially, it could be used at a minimum for enhanced stormwater management control features. We have not received the full review and commentary from the engineer about whether or not the existing road, present configuration, would negatively be impacted by the creation of 2 lots from a vehicular connectivity purpose.
Thank you, CEO McNeely. Any other questions? Councilor Overman.
Madam Mayor, so Region CEO, I know on Wilson Street on the opposite end, we had similar problems with drainage. And one of the solutions was a whole system of curbs and sidewalks to direct the water to our infiltration gallery. I like the idea of the gallery being under our control as opposed to being backyard, because we know people will put a patio over top, will put a fence through it. Is there any discussion with the engineer about the use of curbs, sidewalks, et cetera, on James Street? Partially to control the water, but also the sidewalk, as you mentioned, maybe kids walking to school. Is this something the developer would have to put in front of their house, sidewalks, perhaps? I'm just,
CEO McNeely.
Well, as I mentioned previously, the focus has really been on the stormwater management because it's a fundamental. There's really not much point drilling down on other things if we can't control the historic conveyance of overland drainage, on acknowledging that this is the low point. We did make some improvements to how much water flows to this low point because of the improvements that were undertaken about 5 years ago on the Willison Newell intersection, and then going northerly up Willison to capture water upstream. It did not, it has not eliminated the overall overland contribution, because the reality is series of those properties that front either onto Newell or onto Hall, all of their properties grade to the center, the rear of their respective lots, and then it grades gently to the east, and this property, specifically its rear yard, is the low point. And there is overland contribution coming from those private properties that continues to this day. And, short of terracing each of those properties and putting in systems to control those individual lots, there is a recognized historic drainage pattern, and it can't be ignored. So the first cut is, how can we effectively control that stormwater, capture it, promote it through infiltration? And we know we've got good soils here for the purposes of infiltration. But the question becomes, can it be controlled in the public environment so that in the longer term, we know with some element of certainty that it's being maintained on a consistent basis? Then we'll drill down on the other things like a sidewalk, road improvements, and the like.
Yeah, and I understand that you'll keep all this in. Because let's say you find a solution for the drainage. That road is so narrow, where are we going to get the land to widen it and then add sidewalk? And if we do that, we can't build the properties because we've taken land from them. So
that's why we're taking initially the 2.5 meters, because this is an opportunity for council through the Planning Act to take widenings as a condition to the creation of lots, whether it be 1 lot, 2 lots, or whatever the case may be. Council has no ability to take other lands that flank onto James Street without one of 2 things. An environmental assessment that demonstrates that there is a need, there's a test for the word of need, that would lead potentially to either property acquisition and or under the most extreme condition, expropriation. Okay, and we are nowhere near that level of demonstrating need. However, you do have a proposal in front of you. It's good practice because we do have an undersized road allowance that you protect for future opportunities that may or may not ever be realized. But it's really, really difficult after the fact.
Thank you, Seal. If there's no further questions, then I have the motion, please. Councilor Wells.
Moved by myself, seconded by Ron Wellman, that report PD 48-2024 be received. And that all comments and correspondence received through the consultation process be returned to staff for consideration in a future report to the committee on a disposition of this matter.
All those in favor? Carried, thank you. Once again, those that have come for this application, could you make sure you sign the sign-in sheet so that you're kept up to date about what goes on? And we'll notify you for any further results. You do not have to stay for the next application. I know council's riveting, but you may have a life, so you may choose to leave and to go ahead, be selfish.
Yeah, I don't either. Yeah.
Next up is the 6.6 reports and recommendations, minor variance and consent application. 6.6.1 report PD 49/2024 consent and minor variance application Stanley and Tracy Thorne, 43 William Street, file number B -05/24, A-06/24, and A-7025/07/20 support. Notice has been given in accordance with the Planning Act. The Secretary Treasurer will keep a record of all persons who provide comments on this application and those who register with the Clerk's Department to request a notice of decision. These individuals will be notified of the decision or the convening of a future meeting or meetings on this application. Brock Linklater, Senior Planner, will present this report. Also, those that are here on this application, do not forget to sign the sign-in sheet. Brock, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
And welcome, Brock.
Okay, thank you. Madam Mayor. The following presentation has been prepared to share planning staff's recommendations on consent application BO 524, as well as two associated minor variance applications, which are identified with file numbers AO 624 and AO 724, which relate to 43 William Street. These three applications have been consolidated into one recommendation report for efficiency as they are interrelated. The subject property is located in the southwest corner of the intersection of William Street and Water Street and Urban Air. The subject property is approximately 0.14 hectares in area with a corresponding lot frontage of approximately 35 meters on William Street. Property provides an exterior side yard frontage of approximately 40 meters onto Water Street. The property is developed with an existing single detached dwelling on municipal services. Under the township zoning bylaws, the property is zoned Z4 urban residential and is subject to site-specific exemption 20.1.289, which outlines the minimum development provisions established for a future severed lot on the property. The property is also designated urban residential and ancillary under the township's official plan. Additionally, the property is also identified as being a listed property on the township's heritage register. On November 6, 2023, Township Council approved the waiving of the requirement for the applicant to submit a cultural heritage impact assessment, as there are no proposed changes to the existing dwelling being considered for these applications. The applicant is proposing to create one new residential lot for the development of the future single attached dwelling, as well as seeking relief from provisions of the zoning bylaw with respect to both the proposed severed lot and retained lot. Consent application BO 524 proposes to sever the subject property to create one new residential lot. The severed lot is proposed to have a lot frontage of 14 meters on the Water Street and a lot depth of 35.31 meters. with a total lot area of 494.34 square meters. Retained lot being the proposed, the retained lot being the lot that will contain the existing residential dwelling, will have a remaining lot frontage of 26.45 meters onto Water Street, with a corresponding lot depth of 35.31 meters. The proposed lot area of this lot, of the retained lot, will be 933.94 square meters, and the property is currently developed with a 1.5-story single attached dwelling and garage. The applicant has simultaneously applied for 2 minor variance applications to seek relief from the front yard setback of the retained lot and the minimum lot frontage and lot area for the separate lot. So to continue, the following minor variances are being requested from general zoning bylaw 689-83 for the retained and severed lots. For file A0624, which is for the retained lot, the variance is from section 6.10.4A, which establishes that a building line shall be 7.5 meters from the lot line. The applicant is seeking relief from this provision to permit a building line to be 3.9 meters from the property line, recognizing the existing built conditions of the lot. For the severed lot, identified as minor variance A0724, the variance is from section 20.1.289A of the general zoning bylaw, which is a site-specific exemption, allowing for a minimum lot frontage of 15.9 meters and area of 630 square meters, whereas the applicant is applying for a variance to create a residential lot with a reduced minimum lot frontage of 14 meters and a lot area of 494 square meters. Figure 2 on the left side of your screen provides a visualization of 43 William Street. If viewing the property from William Street, the existing dwelling shown in this image will be maintained on the proposed retained lot. Figure 3 on the right provides a view of the subject property from William Street. The vacant portion of the property to the left of the garage is being considered for the proposed new residential lot, as shown on the upcoming slide. And figure 4 here provides an illustration of the proposed area of the new residential lot with future access provided from Water Street. As you can see in the image, there is currently no structures located on the proposed severed lot. However, there is a grouping of mature trees that will need to be removed to accommodate the future development of the single attached dwelling. There has been no correspondence received from members of the public with respect to this application. With respect to comments from township departments and outside agencies, the following comments have been received as shown on the screen. There are no objections or concerns from the GRCA or Township Fire Department in regard to the proposed consent and minor variance applications. The Township Engineering and Public Works Department has advised that an entrance permit will be required for the severed lot at their expense, and that all costs associated with this will be at the applicant's cost. The Engineering and Public Works Department has stated that they have no concerns with the minor variance applications as long as the consent is approved. The Region of Waterloo has no objection to the proposed consent and requires that the $350 regional review fee be submitted to the region prior to final approval. Canada Post has noted that mail delivery for an additional residential unit would at 43 William would be at via PO box at the Air Post Office, and the Waterloo Catholic School Board has noted that a future residential building permit will be subject to the board's education development charges bylaw. The comments from the Region of Waterloo and Township will be included as conditions to provisional approval. Planning staff are of the opinion that the requested variances to permit a reduced front yard setback for the retained lot and a reduced lot frontage and lot area for the severed lot meet the 4 tests of a minor variance as outlined by the Planning Act. So the first thing we look at is, do the proposed variances conform with the general intent of the zoning bylaw? So for the retained lot, the proposed reduced front yard setback is an existing built condition, and as such, staff see this as following the intent of the bylaw. For the severed lot, the bylaw also requires that new residential lots are created with sufficient lot frontages and areas that can accommodate the appropriate development of the land. In this case, the land is intended to be used for a single detached residential dwelling, and staff believe that the requested variances for lot frontage and area will continue to permit the appropriate development of the land for its intended residential use. The second is that, whether the proposed variances will follow the general intent and purpose of the official plan. The general intent and purpose of this plan is to support the use of this land for residential purposes. The requested variance is to recognize the existing built conditions of the retained lot, as well as permitting a reduced frontage and area on the severed lot, continue to meet this intent. Thirdly, do the proposed variances, or are the proposed variances desirable for the appropriate development of land? For both the lots, the variance is to recognize the existing location of the building, as well as the variances for the severed lot. Support the creation of a new urban area designated residential lot, and staff find it desirable for the appropriate development of land. And lastly, are the variances minor in nature? The variance for the retained lot is minor in nature due to the requested front yard variance simply recognizing the existing built location of the dwelling. And for the severed lot, the requested variances are considered minor in nature as they can accommodate a resident, as the lot can still accommodate a residential dwelling with sufficient parking spaces, amenity space, and while also aligning with the character of the surrounding area. Further, staff is satisfied that the proposed application is appropriate. Staff's opinion is based on the following. We've received no major comments or concerns from external agencies or internal departments, which would preclude the proposed applications from moving forward. Adjacent property owners were notified within a 120-meter radius of the subject property. No comments or concerns were received. Proposed lot configuration and design is compatible with the surrounding properties. And lastly, the proposal aligns with the township's official plan policies regarding infill and intensification in the urban area. Comments? Based on the foregoing analysis, planning staff recommend that consent application BO 524 and minor variance applications AO 624, as well as AO 724 for 43 William Street be approved, subject to the conditions listed in the recommendation section of report number PD 4924. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Is there any member of the public that wishes to speak on this application? Seeing none, would the applicant wish to speak? Is the applicant here? Oh. Okay, members of council, any comments or questions? Seeing none, can I have the motion, please, Councillor Osner?
That's an evil lot.
It's 2 pages, carry on. We may want to get a drink or something.
All right, so moved by myself, second by Scott Kelly, that PD report number 49-2024 be received. And that consent application BO 524 being a request to sever the property at 43 William Street to create one new residential lot with approximately 14 meters of frontage on the Water Street and a corresponding lot area of 494 square meters be approved subject to the following conditions. A, that a reference plan be prepared by the Ontario Land Surveyor illustrating the proposed lot lines to the satisfaction of the Township of North Dumfries. B, that the owner pays the township any outstanding taxes in full on the property. C, that the owner applicant pays to the township the sum of $7,500 as cash in lieu of payment for the provision of parkland as permitted under section 53 of the Planning Act. D, that the owner applicant submit the regional consent review fee of $350 prior to final approval. E, that the owner applicant complete the required township access permit to the satisfaction of the Township of North Dumfries. F, that the applicant owner apply for and enter into development agreement for the severed lands with the Township of North Dumfries that will satisfactory address, amongst other matters, 1, the location of buildings and structures inclusive of the finished floor elevation. 2, landscaping inclusive of tree preservation protection plan. 3, driveway location and standards. 4, lot grading and drainage plan. And 5, site servicing plan. G, that the owner shall agree that the development agreement will be registered against the title of the proposed severed properties. H, that the above conditions must be fulfilled and the document for conveyance certificate of consent be completed by the Township Planning Department within 2 years of the date of the written decision pursuant to section 5341 of the Planning Act, otherwise the approval shall lapse. Chapter 2. 3, and that minor variance application A-0624 being a request to seek relief from section 6.10.4A of the general zoning bylaw number 689-83 to permit a reduced front yard setback for the retained lot of 3.9 meters be approved. And that minor variance application A-0724 being a request to seek relief from section 20.1.289A of general zoning bylaw number 689-83 to permit a reduced minimum lot frontage of 14 meters and a reduced minimum lot area of 494 square meters be approved.
Thank you. All those,
Not a test.
all those in favor? Thank you, carried. We will now have the adjournment of Committee of Adjustment, Councilor Roman.
Well, myself by Council Wilms, that pursuant to Planning Act, public meeting will be adjourned at 7:01 p.m.
All those in favor? Carried, thank you. Next, we're at 7.2.1, report building 03-2024 site alteration, Aaron Board 1699 Sprague's Road. Notice has been given in accordance with the township bylaw number 2612-18 as amended, being a bylaw to regulate the placing or dumping of fill, alteration of the grade of or removal of topsoil from land within the township. This public meeting is for the purpose of giving the public an opportunity to make submissions and requests of the proposed alteration. Please remember to sign the sign-in sheet at the back, if you're here on this application. Rob Roycroft, Director of Engineering and Public Works, will present this report. Rob, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As indicated, this meeting is being held to solicit comments from the interested members of the community on the proposed site alteration for the property located at 1699 Sprague's Road. The subject lands are located on the south side of Sprague's Road, which is west of Shoaldice Side Road intersection. Its property is approximately 24.6 hectares in area, with a frontage of approximately 520 meters. A single detached building, a dwelling, and 2 ancillary buildings are currently under construction on the subject lands, and the property will be serviced by well and septic system. As an overview, the property resides in the rural countryside. Adjacent uses include rural residents, agricultural land uses, and a large contiguous area of significant environmental features to the south and southwest. An Enbridge easement and associated underground pipeline bisects the property. The site alteration proposes to utilize materials that are surplus as a result of the construction from the driveway and from the excavation grading attributed to construction of the residence and ancillary buildings. The proposed site alteration contemplates moving surplus materials from within the property to construct the privacy berm along a portion of Sprague Road's frontage. The construction of the proposed berm will result in approximately 11,000 cubic meters of material being relocated. The proposed berm will extend along the majority of the property frontage and would have a height of approximately 1.6 to 1.8 meters measured from the center line of Sprague's Road. The berm on Sprague Road elevation would have a side slope of 3.1, 3 to 1. The berm would be entirely within the boundaries of the subject lands. The majority of the material to be moved from the site to accommodate the proposed earthen berm have been or will be generated by the surplus materials associated with the installation of the driveway and the constructions of the buildings. It is likely the topsoil or equivalent will have to be imported onto the land for the purpose of fine grading and to ensure the effective growing medium. The early site works that have occurred revealed what we call pit run grading material that would not be overly suitable as a growing medium for trees, grasses, or similar landscape features. The photo on the following slide illustrates the building under construction and the composition of the material on site, which we consider pit run. The next slide, Madam Mayor, members of council, for your purposes, You can see the driveway access entering off of Sprague's Road. You can see the length and magnitude of the driveway itself. The cuts that were necessary to get the driveway into configuration suitable for the property going through the undulating features. And you can see the septic system in front of the property, as well as the 3-inch silver buildings, the buildings, as well as the 2-inch silver buildings beside them. To the north, or to the top at Sprague's Road, you can see the proposed berm area. You can see the pipeline that bisects the property. It cannot be built on. So the berm itself is between the pipeline area and the area of driveway itself on Sprague's Road. Correspondence, we have received one piece of public correspondence. The Architectural Conservancy of Ontario, Cambridge and North Dumfries branch, that was received October 21st, 2024. They object to the proposed construction of the 6-foot berm and request that council deny the application to alter the site. They believe that alteration of the landscape is unwarranted, highly destructive, and contrary to best practices of conservation. Significant natural resources are featured on the site and within the area. The property is adjacent to Southern Region Forest. Unique flora, fauna, and unique species exist. Part 4 designated farmstead across adjacent to the property, with views to and from the subject lands warrant protection. They believe Sprague Road is a scenic road, and the proposed site alteration would negatively damage this unique character. HC Department correspondence, Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. The applicant is consulting with the MECP to address concerns related to the Endangered Species Act, particularly with respect to known habitats of the bobolink and eastern meadowlark, Jefferson salamander, and the unisex ambystoma. Sorry, apologies, I had to look that up today. Ministry has advised the following tasks to be undertaken by the owner by November 29th, 2024. 1, retain the services of qualified persons to develop a landscaping plan to remediate and protect the Jefferson salamander, unisex ambystoma, the eastern meadowlark, and the bobolink habitats. Provide notification to the MECP of the company to retain prior to the design of the landscaping plan. 2, at a minimum, the landscaping plan should include the following as per directions of the MECP's species at risk technical support staff. Design the habitat in a way that includes native plants that can provide shelter, moisture retention, as well as habitat. Avoid fragmentation that could isolate or disrupt the migration of the Jefferson salamander, unisex ambystoma. Avoid further removals of grassland around the perimeter of the home, salvaging what is left for the eastern meadowlark and bobolink habitat. Consider habitat creation or habitat enhancement actions, such as grassland creation and vernal restoration. Township Engineering Public Works Department. The applicant has addressed the initial concerns from the township's external engineering consultant, RJ Burnside. The applicant is working with RJ Burnside to resolve any remaining outstanding comments. A final confirmation from RJ Burnside as township external engineer consultant is pending, and I believe, Madam Mayor, that final comment came in today. We'll receive that email. Grand River Conservation Authority, the GRCA had no comments or concerns regarding the proposed application as the property is not located within the GRCA regulation limit. Matters of continuing review and outstanding. Work continues on the review of the site alteration proposal. In addition to the consideration of agency and public comments arising from the consultation phase, the following items remain outstanding. Engineering review continues with the township engineer. The review will need to account for the long-term protection of endangered species and the edge management practices as requested by the MECP. The cultural heritage impact assessment, the GIA, has been undertaken and a peer review completed. The appearance at the November 2024 meeting of the Heritage Advisory Committee is being coordinated. Discussions continue with the approval agencies related to the need and/or of the content of an archaeological review of the site. Comments from the Region of Waterloo and the interface with Sprague's Road. And we have a comment about topsoil likely will need to be imported to site, or we have a question mark related to that. And if yes, how much by volume given the nature of the material on site. The recommendation of staff to council is the following. That all comments and correspondence received from members of the public and government agencies through the consultation process be returned to staff for a future report to council on the disposition of this matter. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Bob. I have Karen Scott Booth and the North Southwest Conservation as speakers. Karen Scott Booth first, please. Slide, but I don't know how to.
Yeah.
Someone give me some technical advice.
Yes, I know.
I just have to tell you when? Okay. Okay, Mayor Foxton, members of council, staff, and fellow citizens. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight to share our concern and frustration regarding the circumstances that have led to the current condition of the subject property, and to state our position for you as you consider the site alteration. My husband, the next slide, please. My husband, Brian Booth, and I own and reside at 1720 Sprague's Road, the protected property directly across from the subject site. We are strongly opposed to the construction of a berm along the frontage of 1699 Sprague's Road. Our opposition to this application is in response to the significance of this site and the lack of adherence to the existing protections and the due process that was not followed. Next slide. Next slide. To be clear, we do not blame the property owners for the current circumstances and subsequent damage to this sensitive landscape. As there appears to have been a lack of communication regarding the appropriate process, a failure to meet our expectation and the township and provincial planning bylaws with the following studies that should have been undertaken and submitted before any alteration to these lands would have been permitted. These studies include, but are not limited to, an environmental impact study, a cultural heritage impact assessment, and an archaeological impact assessment. In addition, and of utmost importance, the notice of proposed development and site alteration was not provided to the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, nor was it provided to the region of Waterloo. Unfortunately, these notices that are developed as safeguards for the protection of land and habitat for species at risk were not circulated. With too little oversight, guidance, or supervision, this was truly a recipe for a disaster. Owning a significant, next slide please. Owning a significant property is both a privilege and a responsibility. This significant property of 1699 is located on a scenic regional road, identified at the highest level as extremely scenic. It is situated adjacent to the protected Sudden Tract, the Sudden Forest, which is also identified by the region as an environmentally sensitive protected area. It is adjacent to and once was on title with a designated property protected under a Part 4 designation of the Ontario Heritage Act, and it was recognized for architectural and historical significance. It lies within an identified regional study for a candidate cultural heritage landscape. It possesses the potential for the recovery of archaeological resources as it is located on a landform associated with Indigenous inhabitation. And it is also included as a walking trail with the Grand Valley Walking Trail System. Next slide. In addition to all of the aforementioned, this significant site has been identified and known by the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks as the natural habitat of at least 3 endangered species: the Jefferson salamander, the eastern meadowlark, and the bobolink. And therefore, these lands fall under the protection of the Endangered Species Act. Considering all of these facts, we question how this application can be before you for consideration. To allow any further site alteration that will surely damage whatever remains of the sensitive landscape. The trucking in and out, the moving of tons of earth required for the construction of an unnecessary 6-foot berm does not appear to comply with the ministry's requirements. Therefore, we ask the township staff to work with the property owners to assist them with compliance with the ministry regulations and requirements, and to ensure remediation of the natural landscape and habitat with a new design for landscape. Next slide, please. A landscape design that has the potential to create a buffer from the road that will not compromise any further habitat or the character defining elements of this significant area. For example, as you see this slide, this is looking up from the valley on 1699, and you can see the natural trees that were there. I don't know if they're still there. But for example, a row of planting of appropriate indigenous trees and plantings placed farther down the valley slope. This could provide a buffer to the road, but still would not further impact natural habitat or destroy the cultural heritage and character, especially the views from the road and from the heritage property, which we all value. Aside from the serious environmental concerns and the obvious issues of aesthetics with the potential loss of significant character, is the additional real concern for public safety. Next slide. Sprague's Road is well known for a history of serious automobile accidents. The construction of a berm in this immediate area, considering the proximity to the incline, decline, and sharp curve at the forest, together with the potential risk of accumulated snow and ice, will only increase this risk to all the pedestrians on the walking trail, the residents of the area, as well as vehicles, their drivers and passengers. And so in closing, we ask that this council bring reason and responsibility to this issue, to deny this application to permit the construction of a 6-foot-high berm above the center of the road, and to direct staff to work with the property owners under the guidelines of the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks to achieve a suitable compromise without further delay. Thank you.
Dave Piper and Dr. Kathy Heinervich. Is that folks?
Okay, she's here.
Okay. Mr. Piper, sir, so nice to see you 2 days ago.
I'll get here.
I know the feeling.
Nice to see you. I don't have a fancy presentation, but anyway, I'm gonna read a lot, that's the thing. I'm here on behalf of the North Dumfries Conservation Alliance, of which I'm a member and sit on the committee. Our organization seeks to preserve and try to encourage people to look after the environment in North Dumfries Township. It's a pretty significant environment. I'm also in the, I live about 100 yards east of the site. I don't see it from my property, but I can hear it when they're working down there. And initially it was sort of nice to have new neighbors, and the neighbors are always nice. And it seemed like things were going along pretty well to start with. A lot of people were curious about the house and the property. And they managed to put a road into the property, making one big cut across the land. And the house was getting built, and everything seemed reasonable. And then, for some particular reason, one day there was an excavation festival going on that property. Out of the blue, about 12 to 20 excavator machines showed up and started tearing the place apart. So, didn't really understand why, watched it for a while. Karen finally looks across the street, and she hadn't noticed it because of the stick. And so she called City Hall, Township Hall. And to the credit of the township, they got on it, they stopped. They sent people out. This is wrong. This is wrong. It's not being handled right here. And it wasn't just putting roads through, they were tore off all the topsoil. Moved rocks, moved dirt, and you can see there was a berm being built across the front. But there's actually another berm on that property. It's between the properties themselves. There's one on the east side, which hasn't been spoken about here. And there was nothing left primarily of the original natural environment. Now, I didn't know about salamanders and bobolinks before this, but that's a concern because you can never return that property to its original natural state, no matter how much topsoil you bring. So we saw the beginnings of the berm, and that was a concern for me because, as they say, Sprague's is a scenic road. I don't really agree with that. And I don't really agree with it because we've lost a huge amount of the scenery on Sprague's Road because of berms that have been built elsewhere, and I'll get to that in a minute. What bothered us as well was that there was apparently a process that had gone awry with all of this construction. And yes, you got it stopped. We talked to the people here at the staff. They were very helpful about all this, but it hasn't changed anything. And I know you're working towards that. North Dumfries has a lot of scenic elements. People like to drive around Sprague's Road or other roads and look at the beautiful foliage, the great homes, the lovely properties that we have here. And that has drawn people to this community since my first relatives came here in 1832. And they commented on that. This was an important place for land, for trees, for forests. But we're losing our scenic views. And for my money, it's the berms that are starting to really annoy me. Now, I know we have berms for a lot of reasons. We have them for protection of our eyes from gravel pits, which frankly are ugly scar on the property and in this township from my point of view. But in my own neighborhood, we're 3 miles outside of Cambridge. From Cambridge to our place, 50% of Sprague's Road is now burned. There's no view. It's all burned. It's like going through a tunnel. There's another application for a pit coming up that's going to extend it right down to my side. And then we're going to have more berms beyond that. But I don't have just berms on Sprague's Road. I have berms on Shoalbecks. There's a pit up at the far end. A year or so ago, one of my neighbors put in a ground source heat system, and as a result of that, made a huge berm, which I now drive by, and I just see this wall of dirt and weeds. Not very scenic. Regional roads have them. You go down Elks Road, you'll see them, and there's more to come there because there's more pits going in there. So, from my perspective, I keep thinking we have this beautiful scenic township, views of great forests. And what it seems to be we're creating is instead of forests, we're creating fortresses. And there are fortresses all through North Dumfries, and there are more of them all the time. What was a scenic community still has pockets of it. But if the gravel pits are 10% of our property in this township, then we have 10% of the road views gone at minimum just from gravel, not to mention individual requests like this or down behind me or over on Alps Road. I don't know why this is necessary. I think Karen talked about natural barriers. You see it done up in the Elmira Kitchener area all the time. Putting in trees and rows of plants and stuff in order to reduce visibility, give better snow coverage in the winter. And I think we can do that here. So I'm concerned as a neighbor, as a member of the NDCA, especially in this environmentally sensitive area like this. And I'm not going to be as kind as Karen and not blaming the owners. Because what happened with that excavation fest seemed to be a complete disregard for process, for nature, for property. And it may not have been them specifically, but whoever was running that program for them. This were very arrogant about what they can do with that property and what they can destroy without caring about what's left. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Dave. Anyone else wish to speak on this item? Your name, please.
My name is Aaron Borgdorf. I'm the applicant.
You know how to do that good.
Good evening, council, staff. As you're aware, I'm the applicant listed on this. First of all, thank you for hearing us out today. I want to speak to a couple of the aspects that have not come through Rob's report, that have developed as we're working through this plan. Rob had a question regarding the topsoil. At this time, there is no intent to truck in topsoil. We have enough on site. I've gone over this multiple times with our earthworks team. We will not be trucking in topsoil. It will all be native and looking to go 12 inches deep for a good growing medium. I understand the concerns with the scenic road of Sprague's Road. And our intent with this berm is to fill it with Carolinian species of trees native to the area. We're working with a tree consultant out of the Hamilton area, NBK, to pick species that are native to the surrounding forest, plant them on the berm and throughout the property. I would be the one that was termed as arrogant with how we went about the process. I do want to stress that I have done what we can to work with the building department, with Rob Raycroft. We've done our best to walk this road hand in hand. There have been miscommunications along the way, and we've worked through that together, which is why we're here with this application. So if there's any questions for myself, I'd be glad to answer them at this point. Otherwise, I'd like to call the property owners up to answer any questions for you as well.
Is there anybody else that wishes to speak on this application? Go ahead then, come up, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor. My name is Jack Sleeve. I'm one of the owners. And hello to all the members of council. Thank you for your time on this matter. So a little background on our kind of our story here is we started our family in North Dumfries. We bought our first home in Ayr, started having kids there, grew out of that home and couldn't afford to stay in the areas. We had to leave, and life circumstances changed, and we were able to buy this property and start to build, and felt like a great kind of return to home in a lot of ways, and being able to bring everything to this property. Obviously, it's been a little bit soured by some of the things we've had to go through, and I want to reiterate what Aaron said. There's no malicious intent to try to bypass any bylaws or any policies or procedures here. We thought we were working within the parameters that we were allowed to work within, and really just trying to create a berm for some privacy. And I understand the comments around the scenic route that exists there. I think there's quite a bit of scenic route to enjoy throughout North Dumfries, and our property is just one small piece of that. And we're just trying to create some privacy for our family, for our children, and for ourselves. Trying to bring some more trees back, more habitation, and more landscaping there. And as Aaron mentioned, we're not trucking in Phil to create this. It was all coming from the property itself, and we've tried to preserve the natural landscape that exists there. We love it. We're not trying to turn this into some sort of concrete jungle. And I think this could have been a gravel pit. This could have been a lot of other things that are far less enjoyable to look at from the road. So yeah, I think that's really all I have to say. I didn't have a real prepared speech or anything, but just wanted to kind of give our perspective. And while I'm sorry that the view is lost for neighbors. I guess my approach is, when I see those things, I just keep driving, and that's that property, and I don't feel like I have a right to dictate what those people do on the property. We live in a beautiful province, lots of space, beautiful region, and that I guess that's the approach that I've taken in my personal life with things like that. So I think that's all I have to say. But again, thank you for your time and consideration in this matter.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak? I just have one question for you. If we saw a diagram of the road with the trees and how it would look, I think that would be helpful. And also different levels of the berm. So like I thought it was 8 foot, and then here it says 6. So what would a 3 foot look like?
Maximum height above center of road at 6 feet.
Above center road?
Yeah.
So it would really help to see a diagram, I think, for council. Councilor Tilly.
Just in regards to this berm, the distance away from Sprague's Road to the houses, it's not close by any real standard. I don't have the measurement from the distance there. Would trees not be significant enough to give that privacy without putting a 6 foot berm to block everything? Like,
yep. Two aspects of that which we considered in the planning process. We're coming into fall, all the leaves fall off. You still have a completely open sight line for 6 to for 4 to 6 months of the year. As Rob noted in the report, we aren't traversing the entire frontage of the property. We're bound by a limited area, so we're only addressing that area. And again, working between the township and bridge, and other bylaw requirements to just address the loop. I think it's 300 meters long, if I remember correctly, that area alone, with the berm.
Councillor Oscar and Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Basically, I would like to echo Councillor Tilly or Scott Tilly's comments. Oh, no, we're back. Sorry. You're a councillor again. You're hired. Yeah.
Really try to keep them under control.
The distance is quite a ways from Sprague Road. And I personally don't see what is so concerning from the applicant about privacy, especially when, you know, Sprague Road is not a tourist trail where people are gonna be standing around. You know, they're not in a zoo. You know, they're not gonna have people standing there looking. Sprague Road's traffic keeps going. So I'm a little mixed. I'm kind of with Councillor Tilly on how this cannot be mitigated with trees and I am assuming the rest of that's gonna be grass. It was gonna be
Natural meadow hasn't been fully stripped. We've only stripped where we have building.
so when you're done, is this gonna stay wild as is, or is there gonna be grass?
The limitations, what we call manicured property, would be 10 feet on the driveway path. And right around the building area. The rest is intended to be natural meadow. Yeah, so the rock you're seeing has the top.
It looks like a gravel pit. So, and the last comment is, this berm that you wanna, put in, that goes against our bylaws, could the berm be placed anywhere on the property, or it doesn't matter where it goes on the property, or is it because it's close to the road?
That's direction to staff. CEO McNeely.
Madam Mayor, to assist Councillor Oster. No, there's no prohibition as to where an individual can put the berm. The question is the berm necessary and appropriate by its design and function? The only site restriction where no earthworks or change in grade alteration can occur is over the easement itself, because Enbridge has its requirements for clearance protection of their underground pipeline system, and in proximity or adjacency to the Sudden Track Forest because of the habitat, the flora and the fauna. It's been referenced in numerous discussions this evening. The movement of the materials from one part of the property to another, even though it's within the boundaries of the same property, our site alteration bylaw by definition indicates, based on the nature and volume of the works as proposed, it triggers the need for a permit to be issued by the township. So this is where the municipality now has its fingerprints, because we have to assess the nature and in the context of the proposal is by design and function and appropriate in that setting. Are there impacts on the adjacencies? And what, if any, conditions should be imposed on the permit to ensure that if development is allowed, that the nature of the works as proposed are actually carried through into their final form.
Go ahead.
So the last end to that, the last question to that is, how do we monitor, quote, landscape gardens? Does that fall under the same laws?
So, Madam Mayor, through to Councillor Oster, the site alteration bylaw does allow on properties what's we'll call general gardening and landscaping and land transition, but it actually defines how extensive that can be before a site alteration permit is triggered. In this instance, by the order of magnitude, it does trigger the need for a site alteration. And that's why the process is started, the review is underway. There'll be a return report to Township Council at a later date as the review completes itself. And there'll be a recommendation to Township Council.
Thank you.
Just speaking to two pieces regarding the location of the burn. The location as proposed is the most minimal location on property due to the drop off from the road. We're talking a drop in the range of 30 feet. So to achieve the same type of privacy would require significant amount more earthworks. The second piece being addressing an item that came from the scope chia, the proposition of a burn is how the cultural heritage review recommended decreasing the visual impact property and property across the street.
Councillor Austin.
But it's still a burn. You're not putting it there because the property's dropping off. You're putting it there for privacy.
Correct.
Councillor Nolan and Councillor Robinson.
Madam Mayor, so through Madam Mayor, I guess to staff, I'm just curious how we ended up in this position, because I would assume that when they filed the paperwork for building permit, they would have put in a stormwater management plan, they would have put in a landscaping plan. All these things should have been addressed at that stage. Why is it August 29th, when the project is well underway, that this application was filed? I'm just surprised. It sounds like this is a situation where we're asking for forgiveness, not permission. So I just want to know if staff can just sort of clarify.
Whichever one wants it.
So Madam Mayor, unfortunately, Ms. Black is not available tonight for personal reasons. However, the original building permit application, consistent with the building code, outlined information required in support of the application. And so that was a plot plan. Where is the building, and in time ancillary buildings being proposed on the site? And what does the grading or site disturbance around the immediate environs attributed to the principal residence and the ancillary buildings? And then, of course, the septic system itself, recognizing that we're on private services. There was consultation with the region of Waterloo as it relates to the positioning of the works in relationship to the southern track from a habitat, as well as the planned function of the southern track. The region commented no concerns. The Ganaraska Region Conservation Authority was consulted, and their comments back were no permit is required because it's not within a regulated area. The driveway, which now is becoming the permanent location of the driveway, was initially meant to be an interim condition to allow construction and the vehicles associated with construction to occur. The actual driveway was proposed to be more of a meandering driveway, negotiating between Sprague's and the building sites, and Enbridge having control of the easement and what can occur over top of the easement, was not supportive of the meandering driveway, which significantly would have made numerous crossings of their pipeline. And they indicated that the driveway itself had to be more limited in terms of its influence over the driveway. So between the size and scale of the housing and the ancillary buildings, and now running the driveway in a perpendicular manner, and not necessarily being built with the change in the grade and the profile, significant materials were being created. The issue then became what is occurring with all these materials. Under the building permit process, if that excess material is shaped around the building area, it's dealt with through the building permit process. We were now looking at something more extensive, including because of the driveway cut, because of the permanent location that was now being advanced by Enbridge. And the owner and applicant was looking at how do we usually dispose, relocate the surplus material that was generated through the process. And in companion with that, was trying to pursue the berm as a privacy feature. It's at that moment where the site alteration bylaw process now comes to the forefront. and the requisite application, submitting studies, because in this case, the overall volume of material, it triggered the public meeting.
Secondary question, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, through you to the CEO, just to clarify, it just seems on the back of what we did earlier this evening with all these proposals for lot severances for a 15-meter lot. So a lot more reporting, a lot more work to be done to sever a 15-meter lot than there is to develop this property. You don't have to do, you don't have to provide any of the reports they could provide in the village area. I think it's kind of odd that staff don't have a more rigorous process for this. I thought there would have been some sort of landscaping proposal that was submitted with this, that the council could look at ahead of time, as opposed to now debating about a berm that's already started. The land's already been stripped away. There's massive earthmoving put in there, moving that stuff. The equipment I saw when I drove past was the size of the equipment they see in gravel pit. It was quite large, or in large subdivisions, a very large equipment. So it's not sort of thing where they were just moving some soil around. It seems to me like there was an actual effort here to alter the landscape significantly.
CEO McNeely.
So, Madam Mayor, I think I need to clarify and assist Councillor Roman in terms of what our statutory obligations in which we operate. This was an existing lot of record. It was zoned, and the zoning allowed as of right, single detached dwelling. The house, the ancillary buildings, the septic system were all administered through the Ontario Building Code. And because the property met all of the requirements of the Ontario Building Code and all applicable law, which is all what the township can ask for on a building permit where a use is allowed as of right, were implemented and followed. The trigger for the review of the extra applications and companion studies arose through the site alteration bylaw, which was required after the fact, dealing with the surplus materials and where they could be positioned and in what form on the property itself. And so that triggered, to use Mr. Piper's words, based on the observation of the excavation fest, which was not as part of the original house construction, the stop work order was issued. The owner and the applicant immediately ceased work and have been working to try and now deal with the terms, framework, and obligations of the site alteration process. We are partway through that process, and that review continues.
And I'd like at this point to pull us back to the issue of the berm, because I think we've all heard of what's happened in the past and how things are dealt with, and Councillor Williams, your turn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So my question is just with regards to some clarification as to the input that the Ministry of Natural Environment, Environment Ministry will have on this berm application. Will they have comments, etc., for us to also deal with? Because I know they're looking at a broader landscape plan for the entire property, but that would include the berm as well. So I'm just wondering around whether or not we've been to see comments or anything from them with regards to this application. Thank you.
CEO McNeely.
So, Madam Mayor, the ministry is in consultation with township staff. They have provided direction to the applicant and the owner, which was summarized in the staff report. They expect certain works to be undertaken by no later than November 29th, 2024. And it starts with retaining an appropriately qualified individual that can deal with creating native plantings that create a habitat. And I use the word edge management practices between, I'll call it the manicured portion of the site and the adjacent environmental systems, features, or habitat. And so the ministry, first of all, wants to see a qualified individual to prepare such drawings. And then later to see the drawings that support the principles of protecting Jefferson salamander, the bobolink, and the eastern meadowlark species. And we'll approve those drawings. And the ministry has one of two options. They can either by order say thou shalt now physically complete the works as shown, let's just call it in drawing 5. Or they may ask the township to put them as conditions and as schedules to the overall site alteration. And I think what you'll see is it's going to be a matter of timing. Which milestone occurs first? Okay, they have said at the outset, they wish to see that edge practices immediately proximity to where the home clusters is, undertaken by the 29th of November. You could see other portions of the property consistent with the ministry's expectations of the broader habitat strategy reflected in a site alteration bylaw. So it could potentially, I'd say potentially, be in a phased approach.
Councilors, any further questions? Council Rose.
Just one more question, just with regards to the current condition of the site. I know it must look terrible, it must feel terrible just to hang out with it. Is there any kind of remediation or temporary things that are being put in place just to, like, to deal with dust or to, winter is coming, it's just gonna turn into a muddy field if we're not careful and stuff like that. So I'm just wondering if there's anything.
Who's to respond to you? Go ahead.
We are working through remediation, and that's all part of the process of how we deal with it. The dust is an ongoing struggle. I know Rob Gray, Waycroft, and Shannon Black, and myself discussed this. There are small measures we can take, by the nature of the open area. We can't drive water trucks over it. It's a safety hazard. So we are doing what we can. And I've maintained contact to say if other recommendations come in, I'm available for contact with all of that. So we do what we can in terms of winter. We plow the driveways, we keep them clean and safe. In some ways, the snow is a benefit because it just covers everything. And if we resolve this in springtime, it's a one and done. So I would say our practice is to get through all the requirements being laid out and redress this as quickly as we can.
Thank you. Any further questions, councilors? Seeing none, can I have the motion, please, Council Williams?
I move by myself, seconded by Councillor Rowland, that report building 03-2024 be received, and that all comments and correspondence received through the consultation process be returned to staff for consideration in a future report to council on the disposition of this matter.
All those in favor? Carried, thank you. Councilor Tilly, the reading of the bylaw.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Osmer, that the following bylaws be read first and second time. Bylaw number 3517-24 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council of the corporation and township of North Dumfries at this meeting held October 22nd, 2024.
All those in favor? Carried, thank you. And Councilor Rowland, third reading of the bylaw.
Myself, second by Councillor Jones, that bylaw number 3517-24, be read the third and final time and be signed and sealed by the mayor.
All those in favor? Carried, thank you. And Councilor Tilly, the adjournment.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Osmer, that whereas this business before council planning public meeting has been completed at 7:48 p.m. and be it resolved that this meeting be adjourned.
All those in favor? That's carried, thank you. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and staff.